Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Bravo Zulu podcast. Today, we are in the Zoom studio, in the BZ studio. We got an old shipmate. This is gonna be a good one, I think. I think they're all good, actually, if I gotta say so. But we got an old friend, old warrant officer Troy. Troy, thanks for reaching out last week, man. First of all, your words were very heartwarming. I mean, I can't express enough. A lot of people be thinking like, oh man, you know, you're just saying thank you because you gotta say thank you, man. Like, let me tell you what, man. Like, to be thinking that I think this is 80 episodes in now when I started this last year. One, that's like a miracle in my eyes, and then two, whenever someone like yourself, you know, a retired warrant officer, someone I looked up to when we were on the ship together there in Hawaii, right, as a good leader, someone who understood the people, that wasn't too far removed from things, right?
Right.
When I get a message like that from you, bro, that just is like, oh my God, I'm doing something that's worth half a damn that touches someone else. Not that it's anything that I'm not teaching you, right? Sometimes some of the younger ones, I'm trying to like reach one, teach one. For you, it's just like you're like, hey man, that's relatable, and your words, bro. Appreciate it so much. It was very heartwarming. I shared them with Nikki, and she was just like, she because I always tell her, like I said, she has fans. And she's like, yeah, right. Oh, and here's kid one, of course, as soon as we start. Go inside.
That's the way it works.
Yeah, right. As soon as we start. But yeah, I just wanted to say again, live on air, like, thank you so much. Like, it's motivation, it's motivation to keep going. So I appreciate that.
No sweat, man. It's good to hear old voices. And, like a couple of months ago when I first found your podcast, I was like, what is this, man? This is pretty good.
Yeah.
It was before you started video, and it's just the audio stuff. And it was like, this is pretty cool. I'm going to keep up.
Appreciate it. So you, we'll get into some of your background. You're Troy. I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself. And then, just like we were talking about before, like, just take us through your career, when you came in, what your progression was. And again, as detailed as you'd like, and just, share the story of a retiree now and what your time was like while you were in the Navy.
Right on. Yeah. So my name's Troy Cutchins. I'm like Josh said, I'm a retired warrant officer. Put in that what you want, take from it what you want. But I did 21 years of service in about 4 days, I guess, according to my official record. Went to boot camp in Great Lakes, like a lot of folks. Graduated from there, went to school in Great Lakes, then on to Dahlgren, and then to Hawaii. And that's where I spent the bulk of my career, on multiple ships out there. I did a couple of years of recruiting duty, and then came back, and that's where we retired from.
You retired in Alabama, right?
Yeah, I'm in Alabama now with my wife and kids, and I live next to my mom and on her property. And so we have a couple of houses here, and we just kind of all stare out the window and look at cows most days.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. So when you enlisted, what year was that?
92.
92.
Yep.
Man, that's it.
I'm old.
I was barely 6 years old. Yeah. So Dahlgren, if everyone's, I got Penelope in here. Penelope, go inside, please. Okay, go inside, please. Go. Use us here. We're live. This is real life going on. But Dahlgren, you were an FC before you were a warrant officer, right?
Right. Yeah, I came in as a fire controlman, and didn't really know what I wanted to do. But electronics was my love, my background prior to joining the Navy. Just like a little kid, I used to work in hot rod shops and stereo installation shops when I was growing up, and it just kind of made sense to progress into that.
Sorry about that. Penelope's over. She ain't never like this. She's all in my business here. So electronics, hot rod shops, and we'll get to that more of that later, right? But So when you came in did you have any family history of service or Navy service, Army service, nothing? Were you like the first one?
My mom and stepdad at the time were Air Force, Air National Guard. So, I grew up in that. I knew that, I didn't know, but military was kind of like in me. It was just what I was used to.
Yeah.
I tinkered around with college for a little while after graduating. At that point in my life, it just wasn't for me, and it was just a waste of her money and everybody's money. And so I just said, you know what, I'll just come home and do whatever.
Yeah. That's I tell people that was mine too. Like I knew college wasn't ever going to be in my path, right? I didn't
Right.
the Navy or military was going to be either, but I definitely knew college wasn't. So I didn't even put money towards that. And so when you came in, you go Dahlgren, you get to Hawaii, first duty station. What was that like? Was that like probably like 93, 94? So just after Desert Storm?
I got to Hawaii in, actually I know the date I got to Hawaii. It was June 11th of 94.
Oh wow, okay.
Yep. So from October of 92 to June of 94, I was in like boot camp, A school, C school, that business, and then got to Hawaii the day that my first ship came back from RIMPAC.
And which ship was that?
USS Chosin,
Chosin?
CG-65. Yep.
Yep. So what that's a cruiser. What was that?
Yep.
What was your first ship experience like? Because I mean, this is back in the 90s. This is before women on ships, right?
Right. Yeah, it was a male crew only on Chosin for, well, I guess until, a long time before they went through crew mod and stuff and got women on board.
Yeah. So later on you did serve on ships with females.
Right. Yep.
Did you like back in that time where we're not as progressive as today, obviously, right? But did you feel like big differences in it? Like you personally, I know probably during the Navy time, there's a lot of people that had issues with it or whatever. But you personally, was it just kind of like, okay, more people on the ship still got to get to work?
Yeah, I mean, really, that's it. I mean, like Chosin, the first ship, it was all males, with 27, 28 guys in our division. Everybody just kind of hung out, did different things. WOG Day, back then was a little bit different.
Yeah.
Crossing the line was different. But I mean, it was just that. And then I left Chosin in 99, went to recruiting, worked in an office with males and females. And hey, recruiting is, I didn't care, I just want somebody to join the Navy. and then after that, we went to, I pre-commed USS Chaffee out of Hawaii, went up to Bath, and that was a integrated crew. And it was nobody's deal. I mean, it was just a thing. I mean, it's just people working, people trying to do their job. And, then as a young first class, trying to figure out how to get other people to do stuff that is good for you, good for them, and good for the ship. So that's it.
Yeah. I always find it interesting just to talk to some of the older people that have been in around that long, just to kind of get some perspective from it. Because when we served together on the Russell, that was one of the last. I mean, we had some female officers on board, but it was an all male enlisted crew.
Yeah, that was different for me because when I left, when I commissioned, one of the first questions, like after I found out, hey, I could stay in Hawaii and go to a ship out here or out there, is it going to be an integrated ship or is it going to be an all male ship? Because a lot of ships in Pearl Harbor at that time were all male. Mm-hmm. There were a couple of DDGs that were female and male. I mean, co-crew or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was it wasn't ever a big deal. It wasn't like something I'd like, oh, I got to go back to all male ship. It's like, no, that just was a thing of the past, or slowly going to a thing of the past.
Yeah. So at that time, like, as that, you brought up a great point. As that first class leader, you're just trying to figure out how to get people to get the job done, to support the mission, everything like that.
Right.
When you put on chief, what year was that? And then what was your experience? Because you were still in Hawaii, right?
Right. I was on Chaffee.
Yep. Did just about almost every ship in Hawaii during that time.
Well, I don't know. I did 4 or 5. 4. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
That's a good
one.
That's a good
one. Well, you say that, and then I think as a family life, you kind of have to, you and Nikki brought it up about how you kind of sometimes the spouse's career will take a backseat to the military member's career if that's a civilian thing. If it's, if you're co-mil, then it's just nobody's business. Then it's just game on. But yeah, I think it was a lot of work for us to stay in Hawaii. I mean, it was a lot of work to get back to Hawaii to begin with, because I came recruiting in Alabama, up in Birmingham, about an hour and a half north of where I am now. and then, but for me to get back to Hawaii at that point, it was rough. It was like, it took me a couple of cycles, and it just was one of those luck things that just worked out to get me back there.
Yeah. Now, I mean, obviously you wanted to go back because you loved it.
Yeah, my wife's born and raised Hawaiian.
Yeah.
She's from Hawaii, born and raised there. Yeah, her whole family's there, so my family's there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was it.
Man. Yeah, to go back. I would, I always tell Nikki sometimes, I'm like, man, like, because when you're on a ship in Hawaii, it's like you seldomly get to see the island, right? Or you do somewhat, but it's very like some the broad strokes of it, and you're in and out. At least we were on the rail, so I'm sure you were on all the other ships too, right? In and out, in and out.
Right.
It's a tough routine, and it's just like It's like I've seen people on shore duty that are there, and it just looks like their time is so much more enjoyable. Did you get a shore duty at all while in Hawaii?
Yeah, my last tour was at Center for Surface Combat Systems. It's a training command there, and so that was my last shore duty.
Yeah, damn. But then I mean, by then you've already lived there so long, family and everything. Like you already knew it.
Yeah, I mean, but there's a difference. I mean, I think there's a stark difference in families that have family there, and then completely, military like implants that come there only in the military with no real understanding of what it's like. I mean, it's a different culture. I mean, and you and Nikki know, and it's just weird sometimes.
So have you pulled into port? I mean, you pulled into like San Diego, Norfolk, or Washington.
Yeah.
I tell people this all the time. People think pulling into San Diego is so beautiful. Like, oh my God, it's great. It's great. I think they compare it to like Norfolk, where it's like a really long transit through all the bay or whatever they got there, right? Chesapeake Bay and all this, and San Diego, I guess, would be better than Norfolk. But I tell people, man, you guys have no idea. The best port to pull into, CONUS, is Hawaii. Or not CONUS, I guess it's CONUS, but states. Like it's Hawaii, it's Pearl Harbor. There's nothing in the world that beats it.
Yep, that's true. I mean, it's like that blue water is just something that's different. I mean, unless you've flown into there, or if you get lucky enough to pull in there, it's
it not just the water, the transit time is shorter.
The sea anchor is unbelievably short. I mean,
just set it up, get it down, and then I always tell people, like, of course, being able to see the Arizona like every day. I've shared this story. Like I read a book when I was a kid about the Arizona, being from Arizona. Like I just always thought that was such a cool story. Pearl Harbor, the legacy of it and everything that took place on that day and people involved and everything. And so like I found it to be such a privilege to be stationed there, something I dreamt about. Like when I came into the Navy, I thought, man, the only places I really want to see is like Italy, Japan, and Pearl Harbor. And I lived in Italy my first 2 years. And then I got stationed in Pearl Harbor, and I was like, I'm good. I mean, like 2 out of 3, I'm living. And then, of course, we got to visit Japan a couple times, so that's all. But man, to be at work on a ship in Pearl Harbor, and you can just look across, and there's Missouri and the Arizona.
Yeah, like, it's something to see it daily.
Yeah,
just walk outside or wake up in the morning, come out of duty, and wake up and look and go, yep, and I get to work in this. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's just it adds that historic value, right? That sense of honor and everything to your service, because you can see it's like right there. Over here in San Diego, you kind of just look around and there's like, the BAE shipyard.
Right.
You walk out the gate and it's like, San Diego and National City. Yep. Like, sorry, listeners.
32nd Street. Oh boy, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's just like we're just plotted right there along the water, and it's not nice. And of course, Hawaii has parts that aren't so nice either. But I mean, it's a lot nicer coming out of Pearl Harbor, than a lot of other places. Yeah, San Diego, Norfolk speaking. But so tell me a little bit about your chief time. Right? How long? When did you make chief? How long were you a chief before we get into the commissioning and everything? Like, what was that like back in your time going through that process?
It was kind of a whirlwind. I've listened to some of your stories with brothers and sisters about their process of making it and stuff. And for me, it was really, really weird because I wasn't a chief that long. I mean, I was so back up a little bit. When I was in recruiting duty, E5 most of the time. I went to recruiting duty as an E5, left luckily as an E6. But it wasn't. I didn't make E6 until the cycle before. I found out I made first class after a cycle had already happened, or after my test was already taken, or after I already entered the negotiating window or whatever. And I was ready to get out. Like I was on the verge of like, I'm not going to go back to sea as an E5.
Yeah.
I've done my time. I think I've been in 10, like right at almost 10 years now. And I think I'll just take my time and go work, be a contractor somewhere. Made first class unexpectedly, because in recruiting, I was all about, the hustle of, hey, I need another body. I need a body to join something. It's just like, it's a 31-day hero cycle is all it is. So I was almost ready to like interview and kind of transition, so to speak, into civilian life early. And found out we made it, found out we were going back to Hawaii. And then that's where it kind of all started. I mean, that's where the whole, oh shit, I can make chief. Like, I'm first class. I'm an Aegis first class. I can make chief. And so show up at pre-com det. And I know this is maybe a little bit of backstory of craziness that some people won't get. Show up as pre-com det up in Bath, Maine. And I'm in a division with already 9 first classes of 24 people. Anybody who's been in the Navy on a ship knows that it's already kind of cutthroat for most first classes. I mean, there's a definite pecking order that you got to figure yourself out where you fit in.
Yeah.
But I got up there and it was different. Like it was a weird, and I know I use that word weird a lot. It was a weird kind of thing where you get to bring a ship to life and you get to establish yourself and nobody knows you. Mm-hmm. It's not like if you transfer from one ship to another and somebody may know you, or you might come in with some. In pre-com, nobody had any. You really didn't have any backstory except what you presented to everyone. What everybody got to find out about you, and that was it. I just showed up and I was like, "Hey, I'm ready to work. I know I'm the baby first class, probably in the Navy. So, tell me what I can do to be successful." And I had a senior chief then and a master chief who kind of were like, okay, cool. Let's see what we got. And then we had 2 or 3 other first classes show up who took orders in second class billets, which I did also. I mean, like looking back, it probably wasn't on the paper, it wasn't a great career choice to take a lower billet. But I was like, nope, this is what I want. I want to get back to Hawaii, and this is what I want to do. So that was it. I mean, it was just from then it was like, where can I do what I need to do to be successful, and asking my mentors, hey, what do you need me to do? And they kind of rode with that and said, we've got a division full of first classes who are hungry, and pretty much we're going to rule the world. That was the way we looked at it. I mean, it was, it's one of my mentors used to make jokes about FCs and steerage FCs. And for those of you who don't know out there what steerage is, go watch Titanic and you'll kind of get an idea about what steerage means. So it was kind of a weird little ribbon at folks to say, especially the other folks in combat systems, to kind of just jab at them and go, yeah, you work for me. I know you. I mean, I know you don't think you do. You don't think that you work for me because you're not even in my division, or you're not in my work center or nothing like that, but you work for me.
No, that's kind of like
this is my pie. This is my pie. I'm just giving you a crumb here and there.
Yeah, that's kind of like the supply attitude.
Well, you gotta have it. I mean, you
right. Yeah, and that's those are things I've talked to people about in and out of the mess, right? And that's how I kind of like run my small little department of 5 people, right? Is like, and again, in my supply journey, I've always had like chiefs and people that have kind of invoked that, and that's why I carry it, right? It's like everyone works for us. Like everyone needs us more than we could ever need them. And people will get, no, it's one team, one fight. I'm not saying that it's not. Like, don't get,
Yeah.
it's a motivational thing that you have to do for your people, right? And the more you believe it, the better I believe all those people will be, no matter what, right?
Yeah, it's just about finding that drive to make or to encourage other people to do what you need them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And what you want them to do for themselves. I mean, it may not always be explained that way, or sometimes we as leaders may do a shit job of explaining it and making them understand it. But I mean, it's a game. I mean, it's and I know you talk about it, or you've heard me talk about it before. It's the game. You gotta know how to play it. And some folks don't like that. Some folks don't understand that. But they are usually the ones who get phased out, that time out and whatever. And,
Yep. So you're on the ship now. You're hungry for it. You're realizing you can make chief, and you put on chief while you're on the Chafee pre-comming or shortly thereafter.
No, so when I got up to Bath, there had just been a cycle, or the chief's test had just been taken by the folks who were there. I wasn't eligible because I don't even think I was being paid for first class yet when I checked in up in Bath. So I'm just a nub. Check in, and the group up there found out they made it. They made 6 or 7 the first year in pre-com. That group was pretty tight. I mean, they stayed there the whole time I was there, just about. And then I made it the next cycle, so that would have been 04, 05, I think. I get up my little charge book up there and I'll tell you. I mean, you laugh. It's right up there behind me somewhere on this shelf. To know my exact date or whatever, but yeah. So I made it. I'd been a first class for 2 years and a month, I think, when I pinned. So I wasn't a first class terribly long.
Yeah.
So
what was your August like going through the season? And back then, what was it, 04, 05? I mean, it's not like today where it's like a standard 6 weeks. You can kind of like even know before it comes out, like, oh, this is when it should be out. Like back then it was what, 6, 8, 10 weeks? Was it really
it was about 8 or 9 weeks. I mean, we had we were the first class to go through, or the first class to go in, that after it wasn't an initiation, it was a transition. That was what the I guess the talking points were that they had back then. But it was definitely a learning process of how you make chief, why you made it, and you really ain't about shit. You're just, the journey's just now starting.
Yeah.
So
no, that's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put it, and I think that's 2 parts, right? Like it's important, but then I think people listening, you're like, well, what about all that shit we just talked about? People work for us and things like that. They can, to me, it's like they can go hand in hand, right? Like just because we realize that we're really not shit, but you still have to kind of like act like it, pretend it. You have to teach your sailors to be it, so you can go hand in. But I mean, that just comes back to go ahead.
No, you're right. It's just it's one of those things where I think back, and the more I think back, I see, or I would see, once again, this going from in a pre-com mentality and going to that first crew of a ship. It's a lot different from being on a ship that is 5, 6 years old. The crew's in a steady cycle where they're coming, they're going, they're there. On a pre-com, you're there for 4, 5, 6 years. Yeah. I mean, you're there, and especially what phase of the development is that you join, or that you join the crew, you could be there a long time. So you get used to, you get a certain bit of normal fraternization that's there. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a dirty word sometimes, or it used to be a word that people didn't really want to talk about because they thought, oh, you said it. They have fraternization. Yeah, whatever. You can't work with somebody or go through a building process of a ship with a group of people and not become familiar with everyone.
Yeah.
Especially in Maine or in Pascagoula.
Yeah. Not
You
much.
just can't do it. I mean, there's not much to do there. Everybody stays in the same hotel until you move aboard. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, there's only it's combat systems and chiefs can go to the one bar in town on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Supply can go on Wednesday.
You're gonna cross some lines. Yeah. So you're going through the process, your season, right?
Right.
What would you say the biggest lesson was that, like, hey, you still ain't shit? Like, to put it in simplest terms, like, was that your biggest lesson during your season?
No, not at all. No.
At that time, how many years were you in?
4
or 5.
I
So
joined.
12?
I had been in. I just went over 12 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you're right there at that average 12, 13-ish area.
Yeah, but then that wasn't the average. I mean, that may be the average now. It was a little bit past that. Like I was, I guess it was more of a. Well, I mean, I guess there was a lot of 12-year chiefs, but those were the folks usually who had been a first class for 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
There weren't too many of me and the other most junior, the MAC. Like I had been, like I said, I had been a first class for 2 years and a month. There were some salty fools in the first class association that I made it. That other people, like, they're like, how does this dude first class for no time make it? And, it's just like I used to tell people in the recruiting offices, you got to walk like the duck you're behind. You can't be me. I can't be you. You got to figure out what works for you. And that's how you make it. Now, I since have learned there's a pattern that goes into it. But, that pattern may not be accurate anymore. But for me and the 3 or 4 years around me, there was a pattern to making it, and you had to cross those I's and cross those T's and dot those I's.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of people still talk about stuff like that, right? I mean, you can see it though, right? If you look at your group charts and everything like that, and know enough people and know when the most recent one I heard was one of the most recent ones I heard was they're picking out of year groups. They're not just, again, never stood aboard, never will. Right. If you're listening and you have, you won't say it because you're sworn to some higher level of secrecy, G15 classified, but that's like, hey, yeah, we're going to take the best 50, but those best 50, we're going to take X number out of each year group because we have to keep the year groups manned all the way through. Again, this is hearsay. Yeah. I have no inside information on that, but I think there's always some kind of regularly scheduled routine and method of picking. I will regret to or never believe that it's always the top 50 best.
Well, I don't know. I think there's a certain, they look for, there's a reason we write evals and fit reps and stuff. Yeah. But there's a reason we write awards, and we use certain words, and we use certain phrases that people think equate to good leadership, good performance, and maybe a different quality of person. I mean, there's certain things that are written in certain ways, one of the big buzzwords, the ones that made me what I was not really made me, but just was written consistently, and that I wanted written consistently, was sustained superior performance. I mean, that was it. And that's kind of how I modeled my Chiefs package and modeled that from on the model of other people that I saw make it, that did it that way. Yep. And it was just a model that worked, a model that I personally saw work. I knew the kind of people who had that written about them, who had awards written that way. And I was like, man, that's what I'm using. That's the model I'm going with.
Yeah, it's the wheel, right? The wheel was invented once and hasn't been reinvented since.
Yep.
You know, so don't try to another one, best and fully qualified, right?
Yep.
I mean, put those two together and have them on multiple evals, and it's gonna be hard to say no, right? But so getting away from that, we're gonna say your biggest lesson learned during your season. What would you say that was?
That I didn't have to do it by myself anymore. I mean, you got the myths there as, that's your brothers, your sisters, your keepers, whatever. I didn't have to be out in front anymore. Well, I didn't really want to be out in front anymore. It's like I wanted to find that girl or guy that wanted to be in my spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I found my pony and I rode it, that, so to speak. It's like, that's not to say that they weren't rewarded or they weren't recognized for doing their stuff. But I think a lot of times some leaders, I won't say all of us or all of them, get a kind of a shitty rap of, well, you just take credit for everybody else's work.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I kind of do, because that's my job.
Yeah.
But you don't do it and like remove the people who did the work from the equation.
Yeah.
They get the same recognition. That's why it's sometimes I think junior folks don't really understand. If they have a shit mentor, they don't understand. They don't get it. They never get told, hey, we got awards ceremony today or whatever. And you hear the awards, and after a point, it just becomes like, God, this dude, what? She can't be this good. She can't be. She doesn't do all this stuff. Her folks do it. Well, yeah, but I don't know. It's kind of a weird.
But I mean, that's the way it works. That's something I've done with my sailors. I explain to them, like, I am going to take credit for all the work you do because that's the way this works.
Yep.
You have to, right? Like,
yep.
It's just, why do we advance? Because of the work you put in. So yes, the more work you do, the better I'm going to look. It's just the way it works.
Yep.
Don't be mad about it. Okay.
Yep.
Now what I'm going to do in turn is I'm going to make sure you do all this work, not for me, but for you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
I think that's what important. What you're saying is like, some they take, well, yeah. Look at all this work that's on my eval, and they forget to mention that it's those sailors that did it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's bad, obviously, but to each their own, and how bad or good they are at their job in leading and mentoring, right? But it's, you said junior sailors don't understand. I don't think junior sailors are explained, right? They don't understand because it hasn't been the game, right? Going back to that, the game has not been explained to them. And when you explain the game to them, you'll get more light bulbs, flickering and going off and shining bright, because they're like, oh, okay, like I get it now.
Yeah, I mean, like I got lucky, when I was a young third class, showed up to the ship, and like, that's what I got. I had a not a crusty old chief, but a chief that took the time to kind of laugh with us and joke with us, and and hold us accountable, and still tell us, he says, hey, you guys are gonna have to do some of the hard lifting. That's just the way it works.
Yep.
But if you lift, you're gonna be rewarded.
Yeah.
And this is the way that you should work to help others, so that you don't have to lift all the work.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, you had third classes, you had second classes who walked around the ship like it was their ship. Like that. Yeah. This is my stuff.
Yeah.
Y'all are working for me.
Yeah.
Y'all work for me. This is how it works. I'll show you.
Yeah, and that's not a new concept, right? It's like,
I don't think so, no.
But like, people often nowadays, and this is what I think, I don't read these books because I'm not a good reader, but like, when people read these corporatized leadership books, right, from these famous military leaders that have all this field experience, and just they're just they and then they corporatize it, they put it in a book and they sell it and they make lots of money. Cool, do your thing. I ain't mad at you. But it's like, I listened to some of it, right? And I'm just like, well, that's not new, right? Like, isn't this like who? And what gets me is when I hear other military people that are in these leadership positions But like, oh my God, like, did you read this book? That was like that enlightening to you. That book should not have been that enlightening to you. Okay, you should have known these things. But again, I often get on this, like, we don't have a formalized leadership path. It's all, hand me down and stuff. So maybe if you don't have that mentor to teach you the game, right? If you don't have that leadership to put you on and be like, hey, this is how things go, then I can see why you finally reading this book, 15 plus years later or something, why it's so enlightening.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about like other departments or other, like, I mean, combat system centric my whole career, obviously. I think we don't have a pipeline for leadership, so to speak. I mean, yeah, you have the second class leadership, first class leadership, and those things. But I mean, those classes are what, 1-2 weeks long.
Yeah,
you got to take them. They're checking a box that fleet temps or whatever the acronym of the day it says you got to have. And you really don't get that until you're a chief and you go to some leadership consortium, like Combat Systems has a senior enlisted thing. You have the the SEA Academy up in Rhode Island, which is still, I guess, fairly new. I mean, it's been around for 15 or so years now, but even that, it's not the same level. Well, I mean, there really is no leadership. It's just a learned trait in the military. You learn it from having a mentor. And
yeah, and that's why one of the recent ones I talked about, like, leadership versus mentorship, right? I believe the mentorship is like so much important for junior sailors than really leadership, right? Like, you have to mentor them. You have to be good at both, but you have to mentor the next generation, right? Or what? They're not gonna, and this is, they're not
going to stay in,
right? And that's where I come back to, like, when I met you, we're on the Russell. You checked in there because there was someone else there before you. I'll share a stupid. This is my humbleness, right? I'll share. Like, I was talking to, when I first met you in one of our interactions, I was like, oh, you used to be a chief? Because my dumbass, right? I have a lot of family that have been in the military, no one ever in the Navy. And I tell people this all the time, like, I had no sense of how the military worked. Okay. I played video games where you went from private to admiral or general.
Right.
Okay. That's how I thought it worked. I thought I stayed in a really long time, and eventually you just became something, right?
Yeah.
So when I get to boot camp, I see that there's an E side and O side, right? And sure, I learned about warrant officers in there, but they're on the O side ish, kind of, right? So no, they're just warrant officers. So I still don't know shit, people. Okay, like, I get there, I'm like, oh, really? You used to be a chief? I think it was you or one of the FC guys there or something. That was like, yeah, no shit. Like, they go from chief to warrant, and I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense now, right?
First of all, we're weird anyway because there's so few of us. There's even less of us now because they've combined designators and stuff. So there's not many of us, and most time people don't know what we are or what we do, and we really don't do a lot. But
that's the beauty of being a warrant, right? Is you don't have to.
Yeah.
You're there when the CO needs you for that expertise, right?
Yeah, or to make him or her angry. Yeah, that's their job. Yeah.
So I just thought, then interacting with you, right? And our interactions came through like motorcycles, right? You rode, we stood duty sometimes together. I think you had that old white Honda, right? Is what that was?
Yeah, I did. That was when I first got there. I had an old CBR. Yeah.
And I was just like, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, automatically, okay. So he used to be a chief, so more respect because he wasn't just a nerd out of college, right?
Right. Yeah. At that point, I didn't have my degree.
Right. So it's just like, all right, so okay, relatable. This guy used to be a chief. That's why I want to be. So, and then he went warrant. Oh, warrant's a new thing. Okay, cool. Like, I'm learning, right? I'm an E5. I've barely been, what was that? I got there 08. So like 4 years, right? I mean, I'm an E5, 4 years. I got a shit ton to learn here. And then I see you riding by. I was like, yo, this guy's kind of cool. Like, he's out here like riding by. He looking like Top Gun out here. Like, and then just the interactions with you, it gave me that, oh, like, there's leadership that's personable, right? But I had a great senior chief Huffman, if you remember. He was a great senior chief there, right? And it's not to say he wasn't like that guy taught me so much that I still carry on today. But it's like outside of my direct chief, there's different people that are just as approachable in the wardroom, outside the wardroom and stuff. And that's where I was like, oh, okay, like, that's just, people might not think of that interaction as a lesson, but it's just like, you never know when that junior sailor is looking at something that you as a chief, warrant, as an officer doing something that's like, oh, damn, okay, that's relatable. And then, like I said, once I got, I bought my, like every E5 in the fucking Navy does, right? My fucking motorcycle, especially if you're in Hawaii, right?
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah. Man. And then, I mean, at one time our ship, I mean, I swear we had like 20 riders or something.
We had a lot. Yeah. And I was somehow responsible for all of them, and I didn't really care about it. I was like, this is not my, like, no, this is my mode of transportation.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to teach folks how to ride.
Right.
I'm not trying to be the stopgap. But really, I mean, that's one of those things of that unintentional curse, so to speak, of leadership. It's like, yep, you are, dummy. You're the senior person here who rides, so you get to be the mouthpiece for all of it. And I'm just like, okay, you knuckleheads better listen up then.
Yeah, but I mean, it worked. I mean, I'm sure we had some accidents. I know I put mine down once or twice and nothing bad, but like, you're a great person for that because you were relatable. There's a lot of combat systems people riding, so there's direct contact there. It was a great face to put on that collateral duty that even though, and that some people, sometimes we don't want it, but sometimes you're just a fit for it. Right.
Oh yeah. When I came from, cause I had started back riding before I left Chafee, right when I commissioned. And then I was at ATG for a little spell between my third ship, Hopper, and coming to Russell. So I was in charge of the riders, so to speak, out there. And it was fun. I love riding out there. I mean, it's a beautiful place to ride. It's a beautiful place just to go, but riding is one thing. And then I was like, shoot, man, how can I work this into me getting to ride more?
Mm-hmm.
Weekly rides. That sounds like a great plan. I'm gonna put this to work. And then next thing you know, all the commands out there are doing weekly rides where we're like riding 100 people around the island and stuff. It was fun. It was a blast.
And that's what you got to do, right? Whenever you put in those situations, you have to make it work for yourself. You're going to have to finesse it into some kind of advantage for yourself, not just eval wise or something, right? But if it's going to take time, then make it, your time and the best time that you can. And weekly rides. I mean, it was a great time there riding for the little bit that we did. And it was great. And like, that was my interaction with you. And like I said, it just really opened me up like, okay, if I'm watching these people do these things, and it's just a random, like, oh, he's a motorcycle rider, then me in the position I'm in now is like, there's people watching me like, oh, I saw him do that. That might be something they're looking at to get into. It's just another door that gives sailors the opportunity to knock on and join, or walk through, excuse me.
Oh yeah. Or unintentionally, if you do something jacked up, you're like, oh, they're like, oh yeah, that's safe. Now I can do that because Warrant did that, our chief did this, or somebody, I saw him do it, and they're gonna say it. I mean, don't ever get it twisted and think that if you're unfortunate enough to have to send one of your kids to mast, then they're gonna say, well, chief did it.
Yeah.
And then you got to sit there with a straight face, not ready to boil, and own that shit and say, yep, okay, yeah, that's on me. I'll take that one.
Yep. Yeah. It's good things there. So when you get commissioned, you said you weren't a chief for too long before you went and got commissioned?
No, 2 cycles. I mean, yeah, 2 cycles.
So once you put on the anchor, were you immediately like, mind made up, boom, I'm going Warrant, or was it?
No. Okay. We were on deployment. It's like I was in the past, like I was on the pipeline. It's one of those things where, like I was talking about earlier, when you find your pony, you ride it and you get what you want out of it. Well, our master chief at the time, our master chiefs, I should say, because there was like 4 of them on board at one time on Chafee. They were really good at, I think they were really good at identifying talent and using that talent to make the mess stronger, make the ship stronger, and, do whatever. So like there was 3 or 4 of us in our group. We made 11 in my cycle on a DDG. Damn. So there was a lot of us.
No birthing space.
Yeah, we had our own little, and this goes back to one of those weird things, is we had our own little, on a Flight 2 Alpha, which is what the Chafee is. They have a little overflow berthing, like down below supply berthing on that ship anyway. I guess I'll say that. They have a little bitty berthing that's like 9 or so racks. Well, we had four female selects, and the rest of us were males. So all the guys moved to that berthing as soon as we found out we made it. And then the girls were over across the peeway from us in their little berthing. And so we were all there. And now, like an old person, I forgot what I was going to say.
We're talking about you deciding being on the path.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So our Master Chief figured out that, we had some drive in us. Some of us did. We'd obviously proved that as first classes and second classes or whatever. And so they pulled a couple of us under their wing, and just started taking us everywhere. Like all the Master Chief meetings in Pearl Harbor, we got to go. And so we got to kind of get sucked behind the curtain a little bit to find out what the Master Chiefs were talking about, because it's just a different animal.
Mm-hmm.
When you get a star, when you get 2 stars, it's different animals. You get selected a little bit differently. So yeah, they started dragging me around, and I took good notes. So I was on that path, and kind of like, we don't have anything to do with the board, so to speak, at this point, but we know how to write and how to recommend and do this stuff to help people make it move up pretty quick. And that's kind of the path that I was on. And it was just it's a different kind of a story of how me and the guys that applied for Warrant that year, we kind of jumped ship a little bit, so to speak.
So what pushed you to the Warrant? Like, if you're already on this path and you're behind the curtain, you were seeing everything, a lot of things, like what was the deciding factor to be like, thank you, I'm going Warrant?
It was a buddy of mine who made it, the same who we made Chief together. It's an OS buddy of mine. We were, watch buddies. We set air together, and he got me one day. We were getting off watch, and he says, "Hey man, come here. I want to show you something. I want you to look at something." I'm like, okay, whatever.
I'm gonna take a guess at what he showed you.
Yeah, you could probably guess. So we walked out the passageway on a little, walked out of combat, walked in there and looked on a little pay chart and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'll just say it, man. I'll just say it. I mean, I'm not ashamed of it.
No.
But he said, "Look at this." He said, "Look at us." He said, "What year? Where's your year group now?" I looked on, 12 years in, 13 years in. And he said, "So how long are you going to stay in?" I'm like, "I'm going to stay in forever. They're going to kick me out because I made Chief. I'm golden for as long as I want to be." And he was like, "Same." He said, "So you think realistically we can make Master Chief?" I'm like, "I know I can make Master Chief. I don't know about you as an OS, because you guys got to die to make Master Chief. But me, as an FC, I'm realistically going to make Master Chief in the next 6 years."
Mm-hmm.
That's just Joe. As a cocky young chief, still a barely getting paid chief. I'm going to be a Master Chief in 6 years.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, so then I stay for what? I'll be at 18. Then I'll stay to 24, 26, because I say forever, but I'm not going to stay for 30 years because I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
But so I was looked at it. I'm like, okay, cool. He was like, now let's look up here at Warrant. He said, if we put a package in for Warrant, you start as a W2, promote to W3 automatically in 3 years. He said, then it's just a matter of being better than 60% of your peer group. He said, are we ever going to be less than 60% better than our peer group? I'm like, well, not intentionally. No, I'm going to be it. That's not why I'm in this club. I'm in this club to win. So that was just kind of it. we kind of bounced it out, and we were on workups at the time, getting ready to go on deployment. And so I was like, man, I don't know. I'm like, I really like being a chief. I mean, like, I don't want to be that dude. I don't know. So we talked about it for, a couple of weeks. We were going in and out. And I talked it over with Jossie, and I said, hey, I was like, I think I want to put a packet in for warrant officer. And she was like, well, what's that mean? So, you go through the whole process of explaining it. Hey, I don't live in the chief's mess anymore. I eat in the wardroom and get a different sticker on my car or my motorcycle. I said, other than that, it probably not a lot going to change. I mean, I'm still going to start out as the junior person and it would warrant you'll always be the junior officer.
Yeah. So
to speak. I mean, you have to learn about that later on, but chiefs like to throw that up at you a little bit. Like, oh, you're still a junior. I'm like, yeah, I'm still a junior officer. I am. But who's old man want to come talk to?
Yeah.
He don't want to talk to Ensign Timmy.
Yeah.
He says, Troy, come see me. So
it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And that ain't so junior either anymore.
Oh, no. Yeah. So that was initially what it was about the money and looking at what I could retire at.
Yeah.
And yeah, and still, even when we applied, I had intentions of staying to 24, 26. But that was solely it. It was a little bit different. It was a little bit different mentality of why I wanted to do it after I committed to doing it. After I committed to writing a package out and putting it together, I was like, okay, now I need to think about what I'm going to tell Ben of why I'm doing this. And Ben was my master chief. So
did you tell him it was the money? Sort of.
Yes.
In the long version.
He didn't need to. I mean, he didn't need an explanation. He knew why. I mean, he kind of. I think he had been in the game long enough to know, or to have seen enough young chiefs, and even some older chiefs, go that route and why they do it. And there's definitely a reason why some do it and others don't. And sometimes there's a personal reason. Sometimes they always want to be an officer. As a young enlisted, you see officers, you see this and that, and you kind of get infatuated or enamored with their persona or the responsibilities they have. And some people like that. Some people think, yeah, that's what I want to do. Me, it was just like, yeah, I want to change. I want to train divos in a different way.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Because that's an important part of it too, right? Those LDOs, those warrants that are there, so-called behind enemy lines that can provide that other side of JO training, or the more intimate, right? Like, hey, we're on the same team, but listen here, right? Like, this is what your chief is trying to do, things like that. That's an important part of it too.
Yeah, like, when one of the weird things not weird, I'll stop using that dang word. One of the things that that our mess did when we were in transition is they pulled in the divos, they pulled in the department heads, and our master chief got us all sitting around, we're just having a little training session or whatever. We're going through our PQS and stuff. And he called the department heads in. Well, I say he called them, he asked them to come in the mess and just kind of give their expectation and their experience with chiefs to kind of let us know, hey, this is what we're stepping into, because that relationship changes a lot. And it, subconsciously, but for your first class to your department head relationship. But it changes a lot from the day you put that anchor on, and the way you talk to them, and the way they talk to you, and the way they look at you for certain things. And so they brought our department heads in to, I guess, to just kind of pull the onion back a little bit to say, hey, this is what I look for in my chiefs, because I'd never heard that as a first class. I'd never heard, hey, this is what I need you to do.
Yeah.
But as a chief, that's something a little different. So they did that with the department heads, then they did it with the XO, and then we did it with the captain. And you could see the progression of, I don't know if it was necessarily respect, but appreciation for the way the person was trained as a JO by their chief, whether it was, in the department head's case, 5 years, 6 years prior when they were a young Devo, or the XO and CO now, 10, 15 years earlier when they had when they had their own chief as a divisional chief or whatever. And so you could see the way the ones who had good chiefs and the ones who had just shit ones, the ones who didn't take any time with their junior officers, who didn't take times teaching them how to write CAS reps, who didn't teach them how to write evals, who let them write awards that were the awfulest, most poorly written things in the world, and that wouldn't matter even if it was a commendation medal to a selection board, because it doesn't say anything. It just was the little things that you got to pick up on, and that was it. That was why I said, this is why it's important to teach the officers what our job is, and then to teach them of this relationship that we have and how it's good for both of us. And so that was it. So that was my eye-opening moment of like, okay, so some chiefs, this was my first experience of some chiefs are really, really good at their job. And some of them, they're just getting a paycheck.
Yeah. Still that way, bro. Still that way.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and it will never not be that way, right? You hope and dream that is, but it doesn't matter what corporation, what company, what small business. People show up to collect paychecks. Other people show up to actually get the work done. It doesn't matter where, right?
Yeah.
So you're in commissioning. Let's fast forward. Commissioning, I'm sure, was a great time, but let's get into your retirement, right? Because we keep in touch loosely, right? It's not like we chat every day, but once you're commissioned and now you're kind of looking at retirement on the horizon, or like at what point did you start looking at like, oh wow, like retirement's right there, right? And then what were the steps that you started taking to be like, or what was the process of thought to be like, this is the kind of retirement life I want? Because me at 17 years, I've been looking at it for like the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, which people were like, oh my God, you're already on the road program and this and that. I was like, no, it's not that I'm on the road program. It's just like, I know the lifestyle that I want in retirement. So I'm always like, what's my 5-year plan to get there so I can start working on it, right? I mean, obviously I'm getting the work done. That's not an issue, but you've seen other people. I'm sure you've seen them. I've seen them. They're at year 18, 19, 20, and they're waiting on a result to come out, and it doesn't.
Those folks scare the hell out of me.
Yeah, and then they're like, shit, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I retire next month.
And those fools die in like 3 years after they retire.
Yeah, and it's sad.
It's sadly, because they just don't know what to do. I mean, they don't.
All their eggs are in this Navy basket, and they're not hatching. So when did you start thinking about it? And then like, what were the steps that you started taking? And then what was it like? What was your dream retirement?
Well, let's see. When did I start thinking about retirement? Honestly, if I'm being like no shit honest with you, like I knew going to boot camp that I would do 20 years. Yeah. I just kind of figured, that E5 transition period was that was a weird area where I was just like, man, I am a failure because I'm here and I'm not promoting. So screw this. But prior to that, I think I kind of knew going in, because my parents were in the military. Yeah. It was like, I know what's at the end of the cycle. And at that point, they were both still in the military when I joined, or my mom and my stepdad were in the military. They had been in 10, 15 years at that point. So like I saw it. I was like, well, this is the carrot at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, and I can do this. And then you just progress and you start to, it's one of those things. It's a week. I'm not going to say it. It's a it's a progression you kind of grow into,
Mhm.
where you look and you say, yeah, I can do this. I can stomach this. I can stomach anything for X amount of years, and then I'll go somewhere else. I can stomach this job for 3 years before I go somewhere else. And that's the luxury of being in the military. Give it a couple years and it'll change. So yeah, I kind of knew early on. I was like, yeah, this is something I want to do. And then the real no shit, like, hey, retirement's looming kind of thing, probably started happening about 3 years after I commissioned. About the time I put on W3, I was like, I'm kind of done with this canoe club. I'm kind of okay with leaving it to somebody else.
Yeah.
I had that weird mentality of, I guess, that I said, yep, I'm needed here. I'm doing something, I'm making a difference. And then I saw that, maybe I'm not the person that I think I am. And I can be happy going somewhere else or doing something else. And then it just kind of started when I transferred off of Russell, because that was the last straw really. Russell broke me. I'm not ashamed to say that. It's just like that ship did something to a lot of people, and God bless you if you're still in after Russell. But no, I mean, she was a good ship also. I mean, she was good for me. I learned a lot there. I got a lot of valuable experience in leadership from Russell. I'll say that. Yeah, so when I transferred out of there, went to shore duty, I was like, man, this is cool. Not working on weekends, getting up at 7:00, rolling into the office about 8, out by, well, because I'm old school FC, so I'm like, man, I'm here after lunch. Something's wrong anyway. Like, there's got to be something broke if I'm here.
Yeah.
So I was like,
yeah. So I mean, Russell, you're right. Russell was tough. There's still a lot of people in. There's a lot of people that are out. But I think of the ones that are in, I mean, Russell made some senior chiefs, and
yeah, they did. That's why I say they did it. I mean, it was a good career building ship.
Yeah,
it was hard on your emotional and physical well-being.
Yeah,
but
if you made it through, and I'm not saying like all those people only owe it to that ship. They had stellar careers everywhere. But. It's definitely one of those ships that you could look back, and if you find everyone, like the ones that stayed in, they did pretty damn well for themselves, throughout the rest of their career. And some are just starting to hit stride, right? I know a couple of guys just put on chief last couple years and stuff, but it happened for them. So you're looking at, it's that shore duty, right? Because I mean, I left shore duty. Best shore duty ever, that my prior command. And for the last year, I teleworked during 2020. And it spoiled me, and it spoiled Nikki. And it's telework. All I need to do is log into a computer at home, check my email, answer some emails. It's not like, and there, out of the 7 LS chiefs that we had, I was technically the low man on the totem pole. Nobody was emailing me. They're emailing, the junior chief that we had. You know what I mean? And then maybe he kicked something down to me. So, I mean,
that's a lesson. That's a lesson for all you young chiefs out there. You ain't got to be the hero all the time. It's okay to be the back seat and be the caboose and let somebody else carry that load. You don't got to be the alpha dog all the time. I know we don't like to hear that as a male-centric military leader. You don't get to hear that a lot. But I'm telling you, you don't got to be the alpha dog all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it, especially on shore duty.
Right? Yeah, especially on shore duty.
Right, like on shore duty, I was looking for people to take the responsibilities. You go have it, you have it. Like, I knew I had just put on chief, and then I got there, like, a month later. I know I'm not putting on senior chief anytime soon. If I'm going to put on senior chief, it's going to be when I'm, 2 or 3 years, back out to sea.
Right.
So what I just need to kind of like keep my head on straight, do what needs to be done, step up every now and then. And honestly, like it'll work out to whatever it works out. Right. As long as I don't get purposefully get P's across the board, I'll probably be all right. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's at sea where you make it anyways. But so, it was good, but I was just sitting there and I'm like, I don't want to go back to sea. Not after like that, right? And
Right.
so I took a pre-com, and everyone's heard this before. I took a pre-com. I was going to do like 3 more years sitting around in a building waiting for the ship to be built and then go to sea. And, change the plans on that front. But it's that, it's kind of, I think of it as least when you appreciate, when you're at that chief level, even first class level, I'm sure, right? But you're over that 15 years and you hit that shore duty. I think a lot of people, I hope, get that appreciation for that shore duty.
Oh yeah, it hits different.
Yeah, and I mean, we just had our first son, our only son, our first child, and I was like, I don't think I want to be doing this. Like, and me as a young buck on the Russell, I wanted it to be the SKCM.
Oh yeah.
Of the Navy. I wanted to be all that.
Yeah.
Like you put on chief, and then I'm sitting there and I'm like, this, like I said, going to work at 8, checking out whenever I wanted to check out, because the work is done. 2, ain't nobody looking for you, right? It's like, well, they're a chief, they can manage themselves, right? And I'm
hopefully,
like, yeah, hopefully, hopefully, right? It was like, this is good, and it's so I started, we're in the middle of our planning, right, for our retirement. So going back to that for you, so you recognize you're on that short duty, right? You leave the Russell. You said the Russell broke you in the sense of just like, I think you're done with it, right? You're looking at like, I do not want to go back to sea and risk another sea tour like that. Is that kind of what the?
Yeah, like I was nervous. I mean, like I had the good opportunity of being there or at CSCS where I got to see all the combat systems for all the ships in Pearl Harbor. I knew where I wanted to go if I had to go somewhere else, and I knew where I absolutely didn't want to go.
Right.
And so it was just like
slim pickings.
Yeah, it's like, do I want to roll that die and go back to a ship that I've already been to, which is a good possibility at that point.
Yeah.
Or do I want to go somewhere else? Do I want to start over? Like, I mean, because somebody like, you find it in your community as you go up, there are fewer and fewer jobs for you.
Yeah.
But there's also the community of, hey, in your rate, people know your name.
Mm-hmm.
Not in your waterfront, they know your name. They may not know your name on the East Coast if you're on the West Coast, or they may not know your name in Japan if you're from the East Coast. But in your community, people know you. And there's a certain level of comfort in that people know you, they know what you bring, they know what you don't bring. And well, if you're not good at hiding stuff, they know what you don't bring. But that's a different animal. So yeah, so I was like, man, I don't really want to go to Japan. I really don't want to go to Norfolk either.
Yeah.
So do I want to go to the Pac Northwest or San Diego? Not really. No, I kind of like it here. And then I'm like, well, shoot. Okay, now I was thinking Warrant. There's only one of me on each ship. So which one of these do I want to go to that I'm going to be happy at?
Yeah. And I bet most of those warrants are all trying to stay, or a good majority of them are trying to stay there or get to one of the other ships that the other ones are on, right?
Some there were a few of my buddies on different ships who were like, I hate this place. I don't like it here. It's too small. The community's too small.
Yeah.
The Navy in Pearl Harbor is too small, and they wanted bigger Navy, and they wanted different ships and different opportunities. And some people don't adjust well to island life. I mean, I know people hear that and they think you're crazy, but it does take a little bit on you from a family perspective to be in an area where, not everyone looks like you, not everyone sounds like you, not everyone thinks like you do. So that's rough. I mean, even, the Navy is only a small portion of our life. As much as sometimes we don't think it is what it is. It's a job. I mean,
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Troy. Absolutely right. So then, all right, you retire.
mm-hmm.
What was the decision making on going back to Alabama? Was that a tough one?
For me, no. I mean, it was easy.
I'm not asking for you.
No, it was a thing we talked about. Obviously, we started really looking at it about 2.5 years before. My stepdad was getting older. My mom and dad both are getting older. He started having some health problems, and they just made us a really good offer that we couldn't really being financially conscious about things. We couldn't really overlook it, and we couldn't get enough negatives
to say no.
Yeah, and be able to sleep at night.
Yeah, well, I mean, Hawaii is an expensive place, and we were talking earlier, and then we're saying like, excuse me, a lot of people. I mean, if you're gonna live in Hawaii, you're gonna be working.
Yeah, both of you gonna be working probably. Yeah, maybe multiple jobs. Yeah,
yeah, and with kids, they're probably not gonna see you very much and everything. So,
and then what does your quality of life look like at that point when you're working, 18, 20 hours a day?
Yep.
And you're on opposite schedules and you never see each other. Well, hell, what am I? Am I married? Am I not married? Do I have kids? I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Me and Nikki talk about that regularly. So, I mean, obvious part, big financial decision. You guys moved back to Alabama, and since then, you've just been living the life. What have you been doing?
Finished my degrees. Working. Okay, so my wife is a graphic designer. She does a lot of work in the arts community kind of. She's a big rubber. Well, that's what we do. Primarily now is make rubber stamps for everybody. But she started a company, or started her business before we ever left Hawaii. So we were there, I guess, before we went to Russell. It was while I was on Chafee during a deployment. She started rubber stamping with some girlfriends or whatever, and they would meet and they joined, whatever. And she started thinking, she said, hey, I don't have to pay people to make these stamps. I was like, I can design them and then I can order them from somewhere and then I can sell them as part of my business or in my business.
Yeah.
And at that point, she was really big into card making and scrapbooking and, just different stuff. She was published in a lot of magazines. She won a lot of competitions or stuff, not competitions, but just contests or whatever. Excuse me. And so she kind of branched into that. Like she started making return address label stamps, rubber stamps for other card makers. And then it kind of morphed into, okay, well, I can do design stamp work. I can do commission work or whatever she did. And she just kind of did that for, the rest of the time that we were in the Navy, the last 4 or 5 years, I guess she did it that long. We moved here and she just kept right on. I mean, she just, we devoted one bedroom in the house to her office and, she does work. Well, the second year we were here, after we were retired, I guess it was right after I finished. It was in between when I finished my bachelor's and started working on my master's program. We were doing taxes, of all things. And I says, in the process, the way she used to do it was she would design stamps. She would get people who would order them. She would design them. She'd send them to them. And then she would have to order that rubber stamp from a company and they would make the stamp. Mm-hmm. And then they would mail it back to her and then she would mail it out. It was a long drawn out process and it wasn't really efficient. And it would take anywhere from, 10 days to 3 weeks from when a customer ordered to when we could get them their stamp or stamps or whatever product was. So we're doing taxes, and I'm looking, and I said, hey, how much did you pay this company this year? Like in product, how much did you pay them? And she told me, and I was like, I said, why don't we try and see if we can do that here? Like, just see if we can come up with a way to do that in our house, in our garage, in my shop, or something. And she told me, she says, as long as you can provide the same quality product that I get, that I get from company X,
Yeah.
then I'm all for it. She said, she didn't really want me to go work somewhere or want me to have a job. But she's like, I realize that you want to go work somewhere, or you want to do something, because you're starting to aggravate me a little bit. You're always here in my business. So I did some research and found a laser engraver that we drove over to Atlanta and viewed it, and like let the little sales rep do his demo of it and everything. And we went in with some very specific criteria for what the machine could do, or I did. I said, okay, this is the stamp that we're used to getting. I want to know if this machine can make this, and showed it to him. And he was like, he looked at it for a few minutes. And he was like, yeah, you can do that with this. I was like, okay, show me. So I want to see you do it. Here's a file. Like, here's a graphic file that we're for this stamp. So he made it right there. Showed me. I looked at it and was like, cool. And then it's just a matter of how much do I want to spend on this machine.
Yeah.
So that was a whole different level of shit. What do I do now? Like, I've stuck my foot in it now. Like, now I gotta do it.
Yeah.
And so that was it. I mean, that's a long story. I mean, bought a laser engraver. It got to the house, and a couple of weeks later, the guy drove it over in a trailer, set it up in a garage, and so then we devoted this little room that I'm in now to be my office. So she does all the customer stuff. I don't do that. She interacts with customers, and then she puts her files in a Dropbox folder, and I do the engraving.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's it. And then,
I mean,
I get a lot more time to play with stuff now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm always for like the entrepreneur, self-employed kind of stuff, right? And I think it's awesome when you just kind of fall into it, right? Yeah. Like when it starts off as a hobby or something, it's like, hey, that's cool, and then it grows naturally, and you're able to turn it into something that can provide for your family. I think that's awesome. Obviously, supplemented again, like you said, when you first came in, you knew you were going to do 20 years because you knew that carrot was that pension paycheck coming in on the first of the month.
Yeah.
Right? And you made your choices in your career when you looked at that pay chart to realize that W-3, that's a bigger retirement than probably 7, 8, up to a certain point at 20, right?
Oh yeah. At 20 years, the two were night and day. I mean, there was a considerable enough difference where, like, I had to choose as, okay, even if I didn't make Master Chief, if I stayed to 20 as an E7, what would I make, as opposed to what I would know I would make as a W3 at 20. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, that's just not even good business to not consider.
Yeah, it's financially not smart.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah,
it wasn't. And so that was the jumping off that kind of led me into that. Yeah.
It's a great point. A lot of people say, well, you should have other reasons than money. Okay, maybe.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
But money could definitely be the number one reason, I tell people now, I always tell first classes, like, hey, you need to look at a pay chart and look at what LDO gets you. It's nothing that I love being a chief myself, but I was looking at those pay charts too long. It wasn't really presented to me as an option early enough. Right. And I'd been raised by chiefs to be a chief. Right. And no one was like, hey, you'd be a good, LDO supple or something. So it was never on my plate.
Yeah, it's different. It really matters too of when you make chief and what your year group is. I think because it's a lot easier. It was a lot easier choice for me at 12 years than it would have been at, say, 16 or 17 years. Because, you retire at high 3, or it used to be when I retired, it was high 3. So I had to have 3 years in service as that pay grade
Yep.
to get that money. And I was like, well, this is just doesn't make any sense not to do it. I mean, it's just, but I mean, like there was guys that put on chief with me who were at 18 years. So they weren't going to they had no desire
Yeah,
to be
especially
an LDO or warrant, to start over at that
Yeah.
late in their career.
Yeah.
And then by
Oh,
that point, you're
years or
also a
whatever.
little jaded. Yeah, you're also a little jaded at that point of, well, I really don't want to. I built myself up X number of years in the military. Do I really want to start over as an ensign? Do I want to have them say, I mean, because it's one thing to when somebody meets you, when they see your ribbons, they know, yeah, this kid's been around a while.
Mm-hmm.
But when they get orders on you, unless they really dig, which most people aren't, they're just looking at, okay, this kid's an 11, you know, as an 1160, 11.6X, whatever the designator is for junior officer right out of the academy or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they see is ensign. They don't know, even if it's an LDO. I mean, it's like they kind of get the idea of, okay, this person's transferring from another ship on the waterfront, but I mean, okay, they don't know anything about them.
Yeah, not until you arrive.
Yeah, then they look at you and go, okay, this kid's been around for a while.
Yeah, that was one of my big I guess gripes maybe, was like, I'm not starting over. Right. I worked too hard too long.
Right.
I'm going back to the bottom, right? Where now I'm going back to being like, no matter like I get it, like they're the Chinson, right? They're still helping out train. But someone's still looking at me like, well, you're an ensign, and it's still my job and duty as a chief to train the junior officer, which you are. And it's like, yeah, but I've kind of been there a little bit, but not that, I'm like, I'm not. Yeah. I was like, stubborn as all hell. Like, I'm not doing it. I'm here. To me, I've made it, and that's, I'm happy with that. But now I tell junior sailors, especially, like, I got a couple young first classes, that made it fast. They're under like 10 years, just at 10 years. I'm like, what are you doing? Do you want to consider
something? Yeah.
Do you want to make chief in the next year or two, and then sit around as chief or maybe senior chief until 20, when you could be a 03, 04?
In 10 years,
in 10 years, and then call it quits at 20 still? Look, I mean, like, and people are like, well, look, I'm laying out what wasn't always laid out to me. Right. And there's better options, because I want a life like you have, right? Where it's financially stable, doing my own thing, waking up and doing the work that I want. Right. And that's something, again, that I've admired watching you in your retirement, is like, man, Troy, like, I don't know what he's doing exactly, but I want some of that, because it looks good. Right.
Here lately, all I'm doing is jerk, just playing around.
Yeah, I mean, and if it feels like that, it's got to be good, because I'm not doing that when I go get underway on the ship. I mean, getting underway the ship, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. So
right.
You have moments of laughter and stuff, all that, but that's not waking up. And so, like, our plan, I tell everyone, our plan is I'm gonna be a stay-at-home dad. If people look at me like I'm crazy, they're like, no, you could, like, what? Like, I was like, yes, my plan is to be a stay-at-home dad. My wife is a professional. We're going to move to Flagstaff. That's where we plan on retiring. So cheaper than San Diego, where I would have to work.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, so as long as my retirement can, like, cover the mortgage.
Yeah.
And we're
definitely, you have to break it out and look at it like that, and talk to like your financial professional, that somebody that you trust and you can lead you in the right way.
Yeah.
You can lay up and you can be honest with them. And that's the big thing, is like, be honest with them and say, this is what I want to do. This is what I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then, is it possible? Does that seem feasible?
Yep. And I think it just goes back to, I think as chiefs, retired warrants, retired officers, I think we get so wrapped up in the life that we've lived for the 20 plus years, and getting
let that shit go quick,
but being offered, like, oh, you can have this contractor job, you can have this, you can make 100,000 plus this, that, and it's good. And I'm not, if you're doing it, it's good for you, right? Like, you got to do what you got to do to provide for your family. I'm just making it like, there's other things right? And you got to find what's important to you and make whatever it is work for you. And I just look at it like I admire you, Troy, for being able to not be in a fleet centric area.
Bro, there's water around here, but it's a lake that I grew up on.
Yeah.
And there is like, that brings up a whole, like, there's some weird stories about boats and water and stuff, but that's different.
Different podcast another time. Hey, Troy, we'll wrap it up there, man. Bro, I appreciate you, taking the time out of your day and coming on and being a guest on the Bravo Zulu podcast. Again, your words are always encouraging and things like that really keep me going. Again, thanks for stopping by and being a guest on the show, sharing your experience and your career story and everything like that. I appreciate you, brother. Thanks so much.
Thank you, man. Thanks for what you do and keep on rocking.
All right, brother. I'm gonna hit this outro and then just stand by for a moment, and we'll talk afterwards. One moment.
Cool.
For more information on how you can support the podcast, please visit us at anchor.fm/Bravo Zulu Podcast. The information, views, and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely of myself, Joshua Moore, and the individuals involved, and do not necessarily represent the DoD, DON, or those of the respected institutions or organizations. Thanks for joining us.